It was a frosty February morning when Freya stood between death and a 5-year-old girl. Her bark pierced the silence of the Canadian forest like a warning alarm. The coyote, hungry and desperate, was already approaching. Little Emma was collecting pine cones at the edge of the yard, unaware of the danger. In a split second, Freya had to make a decision that would change the life of the entire family. This wasn't an ordinary dog story. It was an act of pure, unconditional love, the kind that has no price. As fur met fur and fangs met fangs, no one knew if they would see Freya alive again. But for her, there was no choice. Emma was her child, and nothing in this world would stop her from protecting this little creature. Some acts of heroism take place in the silence of a snowy morning, away from cameras and applause. Some acts of heroism come from four-legged angels who love us more than we can comprehend. This is Freya's story, a dog who knew what true courage meant. The Thompson family had moved to a small town in British Columbia 3 years earlier. Sarah and Michael were looking for a quieter life away from the hustle and bustle of Vancouver's city life. Their daughter Emma was only 2 years old at the time, and the house surrounded by forest seemed to be the perfect place to raise a child, full of adventures, fresh air, and contact with nature. Freya joined the family a year later. She was a shelter dog, a German Shepherd and Labrador mix with brown and black fur and intelligent, warm eyes. Shelter employees warned that she had a difficult past. She was found wandering on the road, emaciated and scared. But when Sarah saw Freya gently sniff little Emma, she knew it was the right dog. From day one, the bond between Freya and Emma was extraordinary. The dog slept under the door of the girl's room, accompanied her while playing, watched her every move with a watchful, caring look. When Emma walked around the yard, Freya was always one step behind her, like a shadow. Michael joked that they hired the best security guard around. The forest around their house was beautiful, but also unpredictable. Sarah often heard coyotes howling at night. Neighbors told stories about missing cats and small dogs. They were warned not to leave Emma alone outside, but the yard seemed safe, surrounded by a fence close to the house, and Freya was always vigilant. It all started innocently that winter morning. Emma begged permission to play in the yard. The snow glistened in the sun, and the temperature was mild enough for the girl to spend a few minutes outdoors. Sarah agreed as long as Freya was with her. She put a pink jacket and a hat with pom-poms on her daughter and let them both outside. Freya, as usual, sat on the porch watching Emma. The girl laughed as she collected pine cones and arranged them in rows in the snow. Sarah stared out the kitchen window as she prepared hot chocolate. Everything was normal, peaceful, safe. But in the forest, just beyond the tree line, something was moving. The coyote, desperately hungry after the long, cold winter, spied a small figure wearing a bright pink jacket. His hunting instinct was immediately activated. Quietly, step by step, he began to approach. Emma really loved pine cones. To most adults, they were just ordinary pieces of wood falling from trees, but to a 5-year-old, each one was a treasure. Big, small, round, oblong. She collected them all, creating a whole forest of toy Christmas trees in her imagination. This morning, she found a particularly beautiful specimen, a large spruce cone, perfectly symmetrical. She lifted it triumphantly in her gloved hands and turned to show it to Freya. The dog was sitting on the porch, watching her with his calm, watchful gaze. Emma waved her pine cone. "Freya! Look!" she exclaimed happily. The dog moved its ears, but did not react as usual. Instead of wagging her tail or moving closer, Freya stood up stiffly. Her body suddenly felt tense, her muscles ready for action. His nose wandered towards the forest, his ears pointed like radar antennas. Emma, unaware of the dog's change in behavior, bent down again, searching for more treasures. She moved a few meters away towards the edge of the yard, where the fence bordered the forest. Freya suddenly growled. It was a low, deep sound that Emma had only heard once before, when a stranger had come too close to their house. The girl looked up, surprised. Freya? Then she saw it. Something moved between the trees, a shadow, grey and leaning, with a sharp muzzle and yellow eyes. Emma didn't know what it was. It looked like a dog, but a strange dog. Thinner, more wild. The coyote came out of the woods slowly, assessing the situation. His eyes were fixed on Emma. The girl, small and fragrant, was the perfect prey. The animal was hungry, desperate, and ready to attack. Freya didn't hesitate for a second. She exploded off the porch like a missile, hurtling across the snowy yard at a speed Sarah had never seen her do before. Her deep bark thundered in the air, a warning, a challenge, and a threat all rolled into one. Emma froze, terrified by the suddenness of the situation. The coyote stopped, assessing his new opponent. Freya was bigger, stronger, but the coyote was wild, hungry, and desperate. For a moment, the two animals stared at each other, the tension growing. Sarah heard barking through the window, loud, aggressive, desperate. Her heart sank. She turned away from the sink and looked out the window. The scene she saw made her feel dizzy. Emma stood still in the middle of the yard, and between her and the tree line were two animals, Freya and the coyote, both ready to fight. "Emma!" Sarah screamed, running out of the house without a coat, without shoes, in only socks in the snow. But it was too late. Coyote, he decided. He moved forward, low and fast, heading towards Emma. Freya responded immediately, placing herself directly in his path. The collision was brutal. The two bodies met with a thud. The coyote grabbed Freya's shoulder with its teeth, but the dog didn't take a step back. She responded by sinking her fangs into her attacker's neck, dragging him away from Emma. The fight was short, but fierce. Fur flew and snow swirled. Both animals growled and struggled. Freya, despite the pain, didn't let go. Her only goal was to get the coyote away from the child. Sarah ran to Emma, scooped her up in her arms, and ran back to the house. The girl was crying, shaking with fear. But she was safe. The coyote, realizing that it had lost its prey and had encountered a stronger opponent, finally let go and ran back into the forest, limping. Freya, breathing heavily, stood for a moment, watching her attacker flee. Only when she was sure the danger had passed did she allow herself to fall into the snow. Blood dripped from her shoulder, turning the whites red. Michael received a call from Sarah before he even got to the office. Her voice was full of panic, her words coming out incoherently. "Coyote, Emma, Freya, blood. We need you, immediately." He turned the car around and drove as fast as the snow-covered roads would allow. The 10 minutes it took him to get home seemed like an eternity. He imagined the worst scenarios. Emma is injured, Freya dead. His family is in danger. When he got home, he found Sarah wrapped in a blanket on the couch with Emma on her lap. The girl, although scared, was unharmed. Sarah cried as she stroked her daughter's hair. Freya was lying on the floor, wrapped in towels. Michael knelt down next to her. The dog looked up, his eyes tired but calm, as always. "What happened?" he asked, although he already knew the answer. Sarah told him everything, her voice ragged. "Coyote, attack." Freya throwing herself between her attacker and Emma. "Fight, blood." Michael examined the wound, deep cut on the shoulder, probably several smaller bites. Freya needed a vet, immediately. They wrapped the dog in extra towels and carefully carried him to the car. Emma cried, begging for Freya to be okay. Sarah tried to calm her down, but she was on the verge of hysteria herself. The town's veterinary clinic was small, but Dr. Peterson was experienced. He welcomed them immediately, seeing Freya's condition. His assistant helped carry the dog to the procedure room. "What happened?" asked the doctor, already assessing the wounds. "A coyote attacked our daughter. Freya defended her," Michael explained. Dr. Peterson nodded as he continued working. He had seen similar cases before. Coyotes became increasingly bold as they approached buildings, especially in winter when food was scarce. "We need to clean the wounds and put stitches. She looks worse than she is, but she'll need antibiotics and rest," he said, his voice calm and confident. Sarah and Michael waited in the waiting room with Emma. The girl stared at the door leading to the treatment room, her little hand clutching a teddy bear. "Freya will be fine, honey," Sarah whispered, although she wasn't sure herself. An hour has passed, then another one. Emma finally fell asleep on Michael's lap, exhausted from the stress. Sarah held his hand, and they both remained silent, lost in their own thoughts. What would have happened if Freya hadn't been there? What would happen if the dog didn't react so quickly? These questions swirled in their heads, and the answers were too terrifying to say out loud. Finally, the door opened. Dr. Peterson came out, taking off his gloves. He smiled slightly. "Freya will be fine. I placed 14 stitches and prescribed antibiotics and painkillers. She will need to wear a collar and rest for about 2 weeks, but he will survive." Sarah burst into tears, this time with relief. Michael closed his eyes, letting out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Can I see her?" Sarah asked. The doctor nodded and led them to the recovery room. Freya was lying on a soft blanket, her shoulder was bandaged, and she had a large plastic collar around her neck, but the dog's eyes were open and bright. Emma woke up in Michael's arms. When she saw Freya, her face lit up. "Freya," the girl whispered. They cautiously approached. Freya tried to lift her head, wagging her tail slightly. Emma reached out her little hand and gently stroked the dog's head. "Thank you, Freya," the girl whispered. "You saved me." As if understanding the words, Freya licked her hand. It was a simple gesture, but full of love. Michael and Sarah watched the scene, tears streaming down their cheeks. They had a hero at home, a four-legged angel who did not hesitate to sacrifice himself for a member of his family. That day, the Thompsons learned something important about love. True love doesn't count the cost. He doesn't think twice. It just works. And sometimes it comes in the form we least expect. For the next 2 weeks, the Thompson house felt more like a hospital than an ordinary apartment. Freya had her own special place in the living room, a soft bed surrounded by pillows, a bowl of water always within reach of her mouth, and each family member took turns sitting next to her, providing company. Emma refused to go back to her room upstairs. Instead, Sarah made her a makeshift bed on the couch in the living room so the girl could be close to Freya. Every night Emma fell asleep by reaching over the edge of the couch, fingers touching the dog's fur. It was her way of making sure Freya was still there, that she was safe. Michael took a few days off from work. He helped administer medications, change dressings, and carry Freya outside when she needed to relieve herself. The dog was patient, although the discomfort was visible. The plastic collar made it difficult for her to move, and the stitches itched as they healed. But the worst thing was the guilt in Sarah's eyes. She blamed herself. She was the one who let Emma go outside. She was the one who didn't take the neighbor's warnings seriously enough. She was the one who didn't foresee the danger. "I should have known," she whispered one evening as she sat next to Freya, stroking her head. "I should have been more careful." Michael sat down next to her, placing his arm around her shoulders. "You couldn't have known. Coyotes have never gotten this close during the day before. Nobody could have predicted this, but Freya paid for it with my mistake." Freya, as if hearing her name, raised her head and looked at Sarah. There was no remorse in those dark eyes. Only love, only loyalty. Sarah leaned down and kissed the dog on the forehead. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving our daughter." News of Freya's heroic act quickly spread throughout the small town. Neighbors brought flowers, treats for the dog, cards for Emma. The local newspaper sent a reporter who wanted to write a story about the brave dog. Sarah initially refused. She didn't want publicity. But Michael convinced her that Freya's story could help other families be more careful, more aware of the dangers lurking in the forest. The reporter came on Thursday. He took a photo of Freya with Emma, the girl sitting on the floor, hugging the dog, her head resting on his bandaged shoulder. They both looked calm, safe, like family. The article was published over the weekend with the headline, "Heroic Dog Saves 5-Year-Old Girl from Coyote Attack." The story became a local sensation. People called, sent emails, wanted to meet Freya. Someone even started an online fundraiser to help cover veterinary costs, although the Thompsons were able to pay themselves. The excess of attention was overwhelming, but also touching. It showed something beautiful about human nature, how capable we are of appreciating kindness, courage, and unconditional love. Dr. Peterson removed the stitches after 2 weeks. Freya walked carefully, but her wounds were healing well. The scar would remain, but it was only an external reminder of that day. The real change went deeper, in the hearts of each member of the Thompson family. Emma now never went out into the yard without Freya, and when she had to stay at home, She stood by the window, watching every shadow between the trees. She lost some of her innocence, but she gained something equally valuable, the understanding that the world can be dangerous, but there are also guardians who protect us. Michael installed better lighting around the house and strengthened the fence. Additionally, he checked the yard every morning, looking for animal tracks in the snow. Sarah learned to trust her instincts. She learned that living in nature means sharing space with the wild world, a world that is beautiful, but also unpredictable. And Freya? Freya went back to being a regular dog. She ran, played, slept in the sun. But something had changed in the way her family looked at her. She was no longer just a dog. She was a hero. She was an angel. She was a family member who proved that love could be stronger than fear, stronger than pain, stronger than the instinct of self-preservation. 3 months have passed since the attack. Spring has arrived in British Columbia. The snow has melted and the forest comes alive with greenery and birdsong. Emma turned 6 years old. Freya was running again without any limp, although the scar on her shoulder was visible under her fur. The Thompson family has created a new routine. Every walk was now more conscious, more alert, but also full of gratitude. Gratitude that they are together, that they are safe, that they have Freya. One sunny afternoon, Sarah sat on the porch, watching Emma and Freya playing in the yard. The girl would throw the ball, and the dog would happily bring it back, wagging his tail. The scene was ordinary, every day. But to Sarah, she was a miracle. Michael joined her, offering her a cup of coffee. "Do you remember the day we brought Freya from the shelter?" he asked. Sarah smiled. Bright. Employees warned that he had a difficult past. "I thought we would have to save her." "And she saved us," Michael finished. "Exactly." They sat in silence, watching their girls, one human, the other dog, both parts of the same family, both are inseparable. Emma ran to the porch, Freya right next to her. "Mom, Dad, see how far Freya can bring the ball." The girl threw the ball across the yard. Freya chased after it with enthusiasm, grabbed it in her mouth, and proudly brought it back. "Amazing, honey," Sarah said, placing her hand on her daughter's head. Emma looked up, her eyes shining. "Freya is the best dog in the whole world, isn't she?" "Yes, babe." "Yes," Michael replied, stroking Freya's head. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep in her room upstairs and Freya had laid down by the door as usual, Michael and Sarah were sitting in the living room, cuddled on the couch. "Do you ever think about what would happen if—" Sarah started, but didn't finish the sentence. "No," Michael interrupted her gently. "I don't allow myself to do that. What happened, happened. Freya was there, Emma is safe, that's all that matters." Sarah nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "We rescued a dog from a shelter that was previously abandoned and scared," she said quietly. "And she gave it back to us, saving what we have most precious." "That's the true meaning of family," Michael replied. "It doesn't matter how many legs you have, what shape your ears are, or how you communicate. What matters is love, loyalty, sacrifice." Somewhere upstairs, Freya stirred, adjusting her position in front of Emma's door. Even in her sleep, her mission remained the same: to protect, to watch over, to love. Freya's story became a legend in the town. People told it to their children as an example of courage and loyalty. The schools invited Sarah to talk about what happened, teaching children to respect animals and behave responsibly around wildlife. But it wasn't just a story for the Thompsons. It was a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary acts of heroism come from the most unexpected sources, that love has no species boundaries, that family is not just blood. It is a bond, a choice, a commitment. Freya, a shelter dog who once needed rescuing herself, became a rescuer. And in this simple, beautiful paradox, there was a truth about life that everyone learns, that when you love someone unconditionally, you are willing to sacrifice everything to protect them. Every evening as the sun set over the British Columbia forest, the Thompson family gathered together. Emma, Sarah, Michael, and Freya, together, safe, at home. And that was all they needed.